John Miller, an ordinary man living in Chicago, always dreamed of wealth, comfort, and a life where his struggles would vanish. His desires, however, soon turned into an obsession when he encountered a mysterious stranger who offered him a deal promising unimaginable riches. The moment he agreed, an unsettling chill filled the room, though he brushed it off as coincidence. That night, whispers echoed in the corners of his home, shadows flickered across the walls, and he felt the sensation of being watched. His mind told him it was just stress, but his gut whispered otherwise. As days passed, his fortunes began to rise unnaturally fast. Deals that were once out of reach suddenly fell into his lap, and people started trusting him without question. But each time he gained, the air around him grew heavier, and the feeling of unseen eyes became constant. He ignored the unease, convincing himself that success always came with pressure. Yet, deep inside, he felt something had started the moment he shook that stranger's cold hand. It was no longer just ambition driving him forward. Something dark had latched onto his greed, waiting patiently for him to fall deeper into its trap. The first lie John told seemed harmless at the time, a fabricated success story to impress his boss and secure a long-awaited promotion. But that night, something changed in his reflection. As he brushed his teeth, the mirror revealed a faint smirk that didn't match his tired face. His heart raced, yet he tried to convince himself it was fatigue. Strange knocks echoed in his empty living room, and the hallway lights flickered though no one else was home. The more he tried to ignore it, the more frequent the disturbances became. Doors creaked open by themselves, his phone rang with no one on the line, and faint whispers seemed to follow him at work. The lie he had told brought him immediate success, but each step upward felt accompanied by a growing presence. It was as if his dishonesty had awakened something unseen, something hungry. Greed had whispered the promise of wealth, and his lie had opened the door for it to enter his life fully, wrapping him tighter in its invisible chains. As John's bank account grew, his relationships began to rot. His wife noticed his coldness, his children rarely saw him at dinner, and his friends stopped calling. Nights grew restless as dark figures stood at the edges of his bed, only to vanish when he turned the light on. The whispers calling his name became clearer, warning him to return what wasn't his. Fear mixed with greed, and instead of pulling back, John worked harder, manipulating those around him to maintain his rising status. His house, once filled with laughter, became a prison of silence, broken only by the faint sound of footsteps in the halls when no one else was there. He felt torn between admitting his wrongs and risking it all, or pressing forward, convincing himself it was just guilt haunting his mind. But deep down, he sensed this was no ordinary guilt. It was something darker, feeding on every lie he told and every promise he broke, waiting for the moment he could no longer separate his fortune from the curse that now lingered in every corner of his life. John's greed demanded more, and he sought faster ways to multiply his wealth. Risky investments, shady deals, and hidden transactions became his new routine. Money flowed in unnaturally quick, but so did the strange occurrences. Mirrors cracked without impact. Papers moved across his desk by unseen hands, and the shadows in his office stretched longer than they should have. He fabricated profit reports to impress stakeholders, lying with ease as the curse tightened its grip. Friends started facing strange accidents. One lost his job, another fell gravely ill, each tied to a deal John had manipulated. The thrill of fast money drowned his conscience, but the unease never left him. He avoided staying home at night, yet the dark presence followed him wherever he went. The more he gained, the more he lost in peace of mind. Every new contract, every forged signature felt like signing away another piece of his soul. The line between success and doom blurred, and still he pressed on, blinded by the very thing that had started this downward spiral, the insatiable hunger for more than he ever deserved. It all came crashing down in a single violent night. John attempted to hide millions in a secret account offshore, but the curse had waited long enough. As midnight struck, the lights in his mansion flickered violently, and the air grew unbearably cold. Papers flew across the room, and the same shadowy figure from his nightmares finally revealed itself, tall, faceless, and wrapped in the whispers of every lie he had ever told. "The debt is due," it hissed, its voice like 100 echoes at once. John tried to run, but the doors slammed shut, trapping him with the very consequences he had ignored. Every fraudulent deal, every manipulated contract, every ruined friendship replayed before his eyes as if his sins had become alive, clawing at him. By dawn, the authorities came knocking, not because of the figure, but because the world had caught up with his crimes. What the curse didn't destroy, the law would. That night, John realized he hadn't just lost control of his fortune. He had lost his freedom to forces far beyond his understanding. Broken hunted, John abandoned his lavish life and fled from city to city, hoping to escape the shadow that clung to him. But the curse knew no borders. In motels, on highways, in crowded diners, he felt it watching. Mirrors showed fleeting figures behind him. Whispers followed him into dreams. And even strangers seemed to recognize his guilt. His phone would ring at night with the same empty silence, and his once powerful name was now a warning to others. He tried to rebuild, to start fresh under false names, but each lie only deepened the torment. He lost weight, grew restless, and aged faster than the years passing. The curse was no longer about money. It wanted his mind, his peace, and ultimately his soul. No matter how far he ran, it always found him, as if every dishonest step he had taken left a permanent trail in the dark. His greed had bought him wealth once, but now it bought him a never-ending hunt. Desperation pushed John to return to the place where it all began, the quiet cafe where he had first met the stranger with the deal. He arrived trembling, clutching old documents and confessing his crimes in the empty room, begging for release. The air grew cold again and the figure appeared, this time closer than ever. Confess them all, it demanded. He began listing every lie, every theft, every manipulation, his voice breaking with each one. Hours passed until he was hoarse, the night stretching endlessly. He promised to give up everything, to return what he had taken, but the curse wanted more. It wanted truth, spoken for the world to hear. John faced his greatest fear, humiliation, and exposure. Yet with nowhere left to run, he prepared to do the unthinkable, publicly admit everything he had built his empire upon. John finally confessed, exposing his crimes to the authorities, the media, and the very people he had betrayed. His fortune crumbled, his name became synonymous with deceit, and the figure that had haunted him faded slowly into the night. But the price was steep, his family never returned, his friends had moved on, and the world saw him as a broken shell of the man he once pretended to be. The curse left him alive but empty, a reminder that greed never gives without taking more in return. He lived the rest of his days in quiet isolation, haunted by echoes of whispers in the dark. The lesson was carved into his very existence. The wealth he once craved had cost him his soul, and no amount of regret could rewrite the path he chose when he first lied to gain more than he earned.